It's done.
Connor McDavid! It's not real!
The goal of the year?
Panarin!
Part of the past. The celebrations? Forgotten. The history?
Vegas Golden Knights!
History. We're back to a blank slate. Clean ice. All that matters now is what happens next. The Stanley Cup playoffs.
Eastern Conference Final begins Wednesday.
At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. We believe that every sport should be epic. Every home run, every hit, every inning, every play. From the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. Whether it's a walk-off grand slam or a base hit to center field. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only. Must be physically located in Virginia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
This podcast contains explicit language, but it's probably not my fault. Don't worry, I'll talk to the other hosts. Hi, I'm Josh Levin, and this is Hang Up and Listen for the week of May 20th, 2024. On this week's show, we'll discuss the dramatic conclusion of the NBA's conference semis, in which the Pacers and T-Wolves bounced the Knicks and the defending champion Nuggets, respectively. Slate's Alex Kirshner will also join us to explain how the world's best golfer, Scottie Scheffler, somehow got charged with a felony during the PGA Championship. And finally, we'll assess Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker's commencement speech, in which he quoted Taylor Swift before saying that women find more contentment as wives and mothers than by pursuing careers. Sorry, Taylor. I'm in Washington, D.C. I'm the author of the book The Queen and the host of an upcoming slow burn season on the rise of Fox News. Back with us this week, praise be, is the author of the books Word Freak, A Few Seconds of Panic, and Wild and Outside, Stefan Fatsis. Where's my baklava?
No baklava, but look what I got for everybody. A little present.
It's in a bag.
It's in a bag. It's from the Antetokounmpo's store in Athens. And you're each going to get a pair of We Are All Bros socks.
Oh, man.
That's lovely.
That's touching. So we have to wear those during every taping?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, Joel.
Yeah.
That's okay. Looks like a playoff beard.
It's Slate's podcaster extraordinaire, an emotional investment columnist, and new sock owner, Joel Anderson. Joel, does it feel like there's more order in the world now that there's an undisputed heavyweight champion? Can you sleep easier? You feeling healthier?
It would help if I could say Usyk's name. I think that's right.
There's a rematch coming in October, so maybe we'll talk about it then. We'll have some practice learning his name.
I'm not going to say anything. There's somebody on our Zoom call that maybe even the listeners can't see that watched the fight this weekend. And I'm not going to say how they watched it. But anyway, I wish I had gotten that link earlier.
That's big news in Ukraine, though. Page one of the New York Times, Ukraine celebrating.
From the Klitschko's to this dude, man, it's good. That's a fighting ass country, for better or worse.
That's Joel's history of Ukrainian boxing coming up. From the Klitschko's to this dude, a history. Now, as always, we want to thank our Slate Plus members for making this show possible. And we want to let you know that in our bonus episode this week, our guy Alex Kirshner will stick around to talk about the reported multi-billion-dollar settlement the NCAA could be paying soon to past athletes. How's that all going to shake out? Tune in to this week's bonus to find out. It's available right now. And if you don't subscribe already, there are two ways for you to hear it. You can either subscribe right now by going to Apple Podcasts and clicking Try Free at the top of our show page, or you can visit slate.com/hangup+ to get access wherever you listen.
Entering Sunday, the odds were stacked against the Pacers and the Timberwolves. There had been 149 Game 7s in the history of the NBA, and the road team had won 37 of them. And that number didn't seem likely to change, not with the mighty Knicks and the defending champion Nuggets holding huge home court advantages in Game 7 of their respective conference semifinals. So maybe it shouldn't surprise anyone that it took historic performances to do what had never happened before in the 77-year history of the league. 2 road teams won Game 7s on the same day for the first time in NBA history. In the evening matchup, the Timberwolves pulled off the largest comeback in NBA Game 7 history to eliminate the Nuggets. But we're going to talk about that game after touching on what happened in Madison Square Garden, where the Pacers finished with the highest field goal percentage for a playoff game in NBA history, and their 130-109 win. And look, we've got a couple of Knicks fans on our staff here, but one of them has got a microphone in front of him, so I'm going to ask him. Stefan, you're our resident Knicks fan on the panel here. Our producer, Kevin, is also a fellow longtime sufferer. But I wanted to give Stefan first shot at just kind of talking through your pain this morning and how you're doing.
Oh, thanks,
Characteristic
Joel.
Empathy from Joel Anderson.
Yeah, really appreciate it. All right, here's how I watched the game. First quarter, live at home. Spike Lee, Jon Stewart, Tracy Morgan, go New York, go. Pacers don't miss a fucking shot. Dread builds. Second quarter, mostly listening in the car as I drive to watch the DC baseball state championship game. Did not look at my phone. Watched the second half after I got home. Knicks cut it to 7. I probably maybe shouted a Marv Albert yes at some point. Fast forwarded only through the timeouts. Pacers got it back to 20. Fast forwarded it to the end of the game. It was the epitome of a frustrating watch. The other team just make shot after fucking shot. It was absurd. The Pacers scored 39 points in the first quarter, the most ever in a Game 7 in NBA history. They shot 76% from the floor in the first half. 76%, 29 of 38. Best shooting half since they started keeping track of shooting halves. And then when it looked like the Knicks just might have some life, Jalen Brunson, their star player, breaks his hand. So congrats to Tyrese Halliburton for flying that sweatshirt with the Reggie Miller choke sign from 30 years ago in the press conference after the game. But come on, the Knicks were like an injury away from John Starks and Larry Johnson coming out of the stands to play. OG Anunoby tried to go Willis Reed on a dead hamstring, lasted 5 minutes. Josh Hart probably has like 7 torn abdominal muscles. Jalen Brunson broke his hand, as I said. And this on a team that already was missing important players. Great season, though. I was alive, at least, when the Knicks won in 1970 and 73, and I hope the Pacers lose every game to the Celtics by 50.
On this podcast, we like to attack against mainstream coverage, really distinguish ourselves. But in this case, I think we've brought shame to our podcast. There's a lot of upset and annoyance that I saw on Sunday about how ESPN's coverage of the game was all based, they showed like Stephen A. Smith.
Oh my God.
Sauntering into the arena. They had Stephen A. doing a pep talk with Spike Lee before the game. And it was just all about the Knicks. The Knicks are at home. The Knicks have this opportunity. Knicks. And we've fallen into that same trap. It was good to hear at least the name of one Pacers player as opposed to like the 18 different Knicks players, past and present, that Stefan just rattled off. But I think...
Hey, I said they made shots.
The anonymous...
Collectively, they.
The anonymous they. But I feel like the most telling example of this phenomenon is you have this collection of Knicks players in the stands, you're like Sprewells, LJs, Starkses, who have, based on like the generally accepted sort of standards of NBA success, Joel, have accomplished nothing. And
come on.
And then Mike Breen, I remember this, like it was in Game 6, I think, or maybe it was in an earlier game that was in Indiana. Mike Breen says something like, it's been great to see all the Indiana legends from the past, you know, like Antonio Davis and all the, you know, players from that era. It's been great to see them here at the, you know, the field house, you know, in the stands. And they didn't show any of them. Like not a single, I mean, somebody correct me if I'm wrong, because I probably did more fast forwarding Stefan. I don't recall any shot of any Pacers player. No Rick Smits, no Haywood Workman, no Travis Best. Based on like my understanding, it's just like Reggie Miller was just like a giant, like Stay Puft Marshmallow Man cartoon character who is like the only player that's ever played in the history of the Pacers franchise. So it's glad to see that there's now 2 players, Reggie Miller and Tyrese Halliburton.
Well, maybe they didn't have enough space for Rick Smits. You know, I don't know
tall.
how. It's an old arena. So I truly watched this game in a unique circumstance. This is the first time all year that I've gotten out and watched a game at a sports bar. And I guess, Josh, I went out with our mutual friend Christopher Johnson of Slow Burn.
I thought you were going to say
out.
Andrew Luck. Christopher's cool though.
I'm pretty sure Andrew was hanging out with his daughter at the farmer's market like he always does on Sundays. But so we went to this kind of Knicks-ish bar in Oakland, and it wasn't like being in Madison Square Garden, but it sort of simulated the feeling of being at one, by which I mean at the beginning of the game, everybody's just so excited. They've got all their Knicks gear on. Everybody's just so hype. And there's a feeling that happens in a game like this, and that for whatever reason, I can only think of Dallas teams in this context, and I think you'll know what I mean. So, do you remember in 2022 when Luka Doncic and the Mavs played against the Phoenix Suns in the Game 7?
I do.
And they won by like 33 points. But it was like they killed them from the very beginning. It was just like, shit, like these guys are not going to miss. The Suns are having a problem. That's what was going on, I thought, yesterday. It was just like, wait a minute. Like, it seems like every time Tyrese Halliburton is open, he's making his threes. That seems like it's going to be a problem. And you don't think, Tyrese Halliburton's going to have 70 points. But it just felt like, the Pacers got up enough and in such a way that it really seemed to suck the enthusiasm out of everybody early. And then from there on, it was just very funereal. It was just kind of like, man, I don't think they're going to be able to do it. And even when the Knicks got it close to 6 in the third quarter, you felt like this is a Tom Thibodeau team. They're going to be out of gas. Like this is their last gas right here. They're not going to be able to do it.
I feel like there were too many healthy players for the Knicks at the end. Like, I feel like Dante DiVincenzo didn't get hurt. I mean, what's going on there?
Miles McBride.
I didn't realize Alec Burks was on the team until he just showed up. I was like, oh shit, Alec Burks plays for the Knicks now.
Just in the interest of fairness, I'm just going to say the following: Pascal Siakam, Aaron Nesmith, Andrew Nembhard, Miles Turner, Isaiah Jackson. Can we talk about the Timberwolves?
They're going to get swept. Yeah, let's talk about the Timberwolves.
Wait. You guys, you really don't want to talk about how fun it was, though. I mean, isn't it just kind of funny when you see like Jon Stewart and Tracy Morgan and Spike Lee looking ridiculous like he always does at every game, and there's just like seeing their sadness. Like
Fat Joe. Was that fun for you, seeing Fat Joe?
Well, I mean, I want the Knicks to be good because I actually think that the NBA needs the Knicks to be good. Like if they could ever get over that hump, it probably would be really great.
But if you're a Knicks hater, wasn't this the perfect level of the Knicks being good? They were good. They had a good season. It's a good team. And then they fucking get blown out in a Game 7, which is exactly what you want. It's sort of like when I root against the Red Sox. I used to want the Red Sox to do really, really well and then get humiliated in the most awful fashion, the most satisfying way. And
that's very generous of you, Stefan. I think the issue is that it's like a running back who gets 400 carries. Like the Knicks are just done. They're just cooked for the next 10 years.
Well, 10 years. Well, my thought was that I was like,
the running backs always, their career's over. It's over.
I mean, again, it's just man, when Jalen Brunson is your superstar, man, like, you've got a 5'11", Khalid El-Amin ass looking dude, that leads your team.
Enough.
And when that guy gets hurt.
Enough. Let's talk about the Wolves.
Oh, you want to talk about the Wizards or the Pearls?
Let's talk about the Wolves, please, because that was an amazing comeback from down 20 in the second half. And Anthony Edwards put up like a Kobe-esque performance, 6 for 24 in a Game 7. We all and leading his team to victory. But that team, we talked about it with Ben Golliver last week, remains confounding. Like, they are so good and so awkward, kind of alternately in the same game, and their ability to kind of overcome, Joel, the fact that they have a complete zero on offense and Rudy Gobert, a guy that, like Charles Barkley was saying, like not nonsensically, that they needed a bench at halftime, that they have a guy named Karl Anthony Towns who seems to commit at least like one boneheaded foul every 4 minutes and fouled out of this game. And yet is one of the best offensive players and maybe the best shooting big man in NBA history, and a 22-year-old insanely charismatic star who I kidded earlier with the Kobe thing, but despite shooting really poorly, like did genuinely contribute to his team's victory, both with clutch shot making, both with assists, and by locking down Jamal Murray in the second half, and is a guy who embraces defense in a way that this whole team does. It's a really, I think, fun team. It's a really compelling team, and it's a team that, you know, clearly deserves a lot of credit for beating the defending champs and the three-time MVP Nikola Jokic on the road in a Game 7.
Yeah, I mean, I think so when you're watching that game yesterday and it's in the third quarter and you get the feeling like, well, I mean, I don't know if you guys feel the same way, but whenever I watch the Timberwolves play, like, it's really hard to have a lot of faith in them. Because for one, we've never seen the Timberwolves be an elite basketball team in the history of the franchise. Like, they've made it to the Western Conference Finals before 20 years ago, but that wasn't a great team. It was a good team. And so you watch the Timberwolves and you're like, well, they've got their limits. I mean, they've got talent, but they're an awkward fit. And also they're kind of stupid. Like, is it just a team, like, you just don't have any faith that they're going to make the right decisions. But the one thing that I thought about in that third quarter, I was like, Anthony Edwards isn't going to finish with 4 points. You know what I mean? I was like, Anthony Edwards is going to somehow get up to 15, 16, 18. Like, because that's just like what a superstar or a star player in the NBA does. They figure it out. They're going to, you know, make a push. And that's actually what happened. And so, like, even though I didn't have a lot of faith in the Wolves to come back, Stefan, the one thing that I thought that was working in their favor was that, well, Anthony Edwards hasn't had a chance to cook yet. And he is going to score at some point. And that's kind of what happened, right?
Yeah, he hit that three at the buzzer to end the third quarter. And what did he have, like 9 points in the third quarter, something like that? It was, again, one of those sort of, you watched it happen and it felt like it was happening in slow motion. But I was also watching Nikola Jokic miss shot after shot after shot. He had a bad game. And how much of that was the Wolves' tenacious defense and how much of that was just Jokic having a bad game? I mean, he was taking shots that he normally drains, those step back threes straight up and over a defender in his face that he makes look so easy were clanking. He just was not good. And yeah, Jamal Murray felt like he was more locked down. With Jokic, it just felt like he didn't have a good game.
Yeah, he's had a bad shooting playoffs from three. He started hitting them towards the end, but he played pretty much the whole game and looked really gassed. I mean, the whole team looked gassed. And other than Jokic and Murray, you know, there are other guys, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, Michael Porter Jr., Aaron Gordon, who, you know, are the best. That was the best starting five in the NBA for the last two seasons. Those guys didn't bring it in this game. And, you know, their bench, which is depleted this year compared to last year, didn't show up for most of the playoffs. But
I've heard so much about fucking Bruce Brown. I was like, okay, I didn't realize Bruce Brown was the inflection point for the NBA championship. Oh, the Nuggets no longer have Bruce Brown on their bench anymore. It's really hurting them. And I'm sure it did. But if that's the margin between you and the NBA championship, then I'm not really sure how great you actually are.
No, I think, you know, they're the sixth straight NBA champion not to make it out of the second round. It's an entirely new era in NBA history. This has never happened before. And I think some of it is when you play for 77 years, just like on Sunday, two road teams winning, sometimes things happen that have never happened before. But I think it's, you know, mostly a consequence of the, you know, salary cap and the rules around, you know, how salaries and how many star players you can have on a team. It hurts you to not be able to build depth. And the Nuggets had continuity, but it's just really hard, and it's harder than ever to repeat. And so it's not anything particularly unusual or extraordinary or shameful for the Nuggets to, you know, get to where they did and not advance any further. It's just the kind of new norm in the NBA, which is really interesting. And there's going to be another new champion. And I think other than Boston, none of the teams losing at this point would be surprising or shameful. And it's like all the pressure is on the Celtics, and it feels super compelling because it seems like they're probably going to blow it, or at least it's extremely possible that they're going to blow it. And the Wolves are looking tough.
Yeah. And I mean, the one thing about it for the Timberwolves is like, even if they go through, because again, I don't think anybody is under the impression that this is a great team. They're, again, a very good team. But, to maybe give the Nuggets the benefit of the doubt, even though, I'm not a huge fan of the Nuggets for whatever reason. But we can't tell anything about the regular season now because teams are mostly managing themselves, and apparently officiating is just going to change mid-year, and they're going to call the games differently. But next year, we probably will see a different Western champion anyway, right? Because the Thunder aren't going anywhere.
It's also just based on who's injured during the playoffs.
Yeah, the Pels are going to be better next year. The Clippers might be better. I mean, every team. Yeah, I don't know about that one, but every team in the West, even including the Spurs, are probably going to be better next year. And so it's just going to probably end up being like this for you. There'll be a lot of really good teams, but if you have an injury here or there, something goes wrong, there's some chemistry issues, and things will flip up like it apparently did this year. In the next segment, we'll bring on Slate's Alex Kirshner to talk about last week's arrest of the best golfer in the world.
Looking for an assist with your credit card, but can't get a hold of anyone? Luckily, with 24/7 US-based live customer service from Discover, everyone has the option to talk to a real person anytime, day or night. Yep, you heard that right. You can talk to a real human in customer service anytime. Sounds like a real game changer. Make the right call and get the service you deserve with Discover. Limitations apply. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. Looking for an assist with your credit card, but can't get a hold of anyone? Luckily, with 24/7 US-based live customer service from Discover, everyone has the option to talk to a real person anytime, day or night. Yep, you heard that right. You can talk to a real human in customer service anytime. Sounds like a real game changer. Make the right call and get the service you deserve with Discover. Limitations apply. See terms at discover.com/creditcard. On Sunday at Valhalla Golf Club in Louisville, Xander Schauffele won the PGA Championship, his first ever major, and set an all-time record for the lowest score to par at any major, shooting 21 under. Scottie Scheffler finished 8 shots back. Pretty meh for the number one golfer in the world. But his Friday was not so ho-hum. That morning, Scheffler got arrested, taken to jail, and charged with a second-degree assault of a police officer, a felony, after, according to the police, failing to comply with instructions as he drove to the course. Then, pretty quickly, he got out of jail, shot a 5-under par 66, and did a post-round press conference.
I did spend some time stretching in a jail cell. That was a first for me. That was part of my warm-up. I was just sitting there waiting, and, I started going through my warm-up. I felt like there was a chance I may be able to still come out here and play, and so I started going through my routine. I tried to get my heart rate down as much as I could today, but like I said, I still feel like my head's spinning a little bit, but yeah, I was fortunate to be able to make it back out and play some golf today.
Joining us now is Alex Kirshner. He's a Slate contributing writer and one of the hosts of the excellent college football podcast Split Zone Duo. Hey, Alex.
Josh, hello. Great to be here.
Let's go back to Friday morning in Louisville. I gave a pretty brief summary, but can you walk us through what happened outside the course?
Scottie Scheffler was on his way into Valhalla, which I learned at the same time everybody else did, has exactly 1 point of ingress and egress. It was dark. It was a little bit rainy. There had been a horrible accident earlier in the morning, a crash, I should say, in which a shuttle bus killed a pedestrian, a vendor who was working at the tournament. And as a result of that, there was traffic direction and people being steered in and out of the golf course in a way that might have been a little bit different than usual. Scottie Scheffler was on his way in still the pre-dawn hours of the morning. He drove in such a way that a police officer of the Louisville Metro Police Department did not approve of. Scottie Scheffler says it was a misunderstanding. that is consistent with a couple of eyewitness accounts, so they obviously can't know exactly what was in his head. The detective from the Louisville police says that he refused in order to stop. And then there were about 10 yards of driving that are still, as we record this, the subject of some dispute, where the cop says that he was dragged on the ground after he sort of latched onto the car and Scottie Scheffler didn't stop. There have been other accounts that say that the police officer sort of made a more nebulous contact with the car, like got agitated and fell down chasing after it. It's really not exactly clear. But anyway, Scottie Scheffler insists it was a misunderstanding. Cop didn't see it that way. He was hauled off to jail, spent the better part of a couple of hours there, and did that stretch in the jail cell that he talks about, and then was released, and then went out and nearly eagled his first hole of the day, putted in for birdie, shot a 67, and was in great...
66, I believe.
Excuse me, a 66. Thank you. Sorry, a 5-under on a par 71, because it's a par 71. Too easy a golf course, by the way. Getting a lot of criticism for that over the last couple of days. Shot a 5-under, and then... left himself in contention going into the weekend before he uncharacteristically, and perhaps relatedly to this arrest, did not have the stuff on Saturday and wound up not contending.
Joel, the police report had an all-time classic line in which the officer noted that his uniform pants, valued at approximately $80, were damaged beyond repair. It seems like these charges against Scheffler are going to be dropped, perhaps in part because against department rules, the officer did not have his body cam running. What is your take on this entire story?
I really don't know how to feel. And I think, Alex kind of hints at it in his piece where he said there cannot be that wide of a cross-section of society that is passionate about Scottie Scheffler's golf game and the escalatory, overreaching tactics of police departments. So
Alex's left-wing golf chat that's him and himself was just really blowing up over the weekend, I'm sure.
Right. So I care quite a bit about the latter part of that equation and not very much about the first. So I just think it's more funny than anything, because I know how that looks if, it's not a golfer and it's not a wealthy white man, being, at the center of this. And it seems a lot scarier, and that there's a real potential for something to go awry, right? There's no need for me to do fanfic about what would happen if Scottie Scheffler was black, but
I completely agree. And not only that, but even if he was just a less famous white or privileged white guy, he probably isn't processed in basically minutes and back on the golf course. And he probably does not have easy access to some of the best lawyers in the state for a dollar amount that he can't possibly care about, and the ability to just, say that really sucked, but pretty much shrug it off. You're looking at a much longer process and a much more financially onerous process if you're not only if you're not, Scottie Scheffler, but if you're not somebody of a lot of money and a lot of connections. And I think we shouldn't lose sight of that. I think it's a great point that you make.
Once I was talking to this really famous attorney in Baltimore. He's even made an appearance on The Wire. His name is William Murphy, right? And he's, represented all the big people in Baltimore cases. And once he said, man, people say that, we need to do this with the police department, do this, reform this way. He's like, you know what they need to do? And I was like, no, what? He's like, just police us how they police white people. I was like, that would be really nice. But actually, now I don't know. I mean, I see Scottie Scheffler get hemmed up like that, Stefan, and I'm like, well, I don't know. What is it like? Maybe that's not as an effective a solution as you think.
Oh, maybe the problem is that just police overreact to the most benign incidents, even when we take out race, wealth, status of the equation. Scottie Scheffler, it sounds like he maybe someone sort of pointed that he should go this way to try to get into the golf course because he did have a pass that would allow him to get into the golf course. And some fucking cop overreacted and dragged him out and slapped handcuffs on him.
Also not clear that it was a police officer. They were like traffic.
Right. They were
just like
guards.
wearing rain gear.
Right. Right. I mean, and, what could have happened? You're right, Joel. We don't want to go to what could have happened. But look, there have been NBA players that have had their legs broken by the cops outside of bars for standing around.
Thabo Sefolosha, I don't ever remember him playing in the league again after that happened, by the way. So,
this had to be a tough one for golf fans, as you kind of alluded to before. Like, who do you root for here? The privileged golfer, the cops? This is a right-wing dilemma.
Additionally, the ramifications of the arrest are significant on the golf tournament because Scottie Scheffler goes out on Friday and he shoots this 5 under, and it's quite a legendary moment for the best golfer in the world because he just got out of jail and went out and played a very good round. On Saturday, a day when the course was incredibly easy and the course record was tied after having been previously set on Thursday, but where birdies were just out there for the taking and everybody was making them, and it was the easiest golf course you'll ever see a major on. Scottie Scheffler comes out and shoots his first over par round in eons, like a year. And does that make Xander Schauffele's championship kind of a sham? Because we can understand that Scottie Scheffler would have been in contention if not for what had to be a pretty deflating experience between Friday and Saturday. People are asking the question.
Or was it more significant, Alex, that Scottie Scheffler's caddy abandoned him to go to his kid's high school graduation on Saturday?
Sad, isn't it? It's sad. Yeah, that you would do that to your employer. Yeah.
It is sad. Well, the fascinating thing about Scottie Scheffler is how unfascinating he is or was, despite being by far and away the greatest golfer in the world. I believe a certain Alex Kirshner said that he was the most sublime golfer since prime Tiger Woods. I made this comment about Shohei Ohtani during the whole gambling scandal that this is great for baseball. This guy's famous now. It turned out actually that I think that the gambling thing, now that we've had a little bit of time to digest it, I actually don't think it made Shohei Ohtani that much more famous. We'll see in a couple months or in a couple years, but it kind of maybe blew over a little bit. But there were Scottie Scheffler memes maybe increased by a factor of 8 million over the weekend in terms of pre-arrest and post-arrest. And he certainly handled the whole thing, both the arrest and the press conference afterwards, very well, very coolly, comported himself quite well. Maybe he would have become more famous and popular if he had won the tournament. Maybe he should have thought about that. But what do you think? Do you think that that this will increase the Q rating of the greatest golfer in the world?
Probably not long term, but I will say that the day of reaction to this happening was sort of like the integration of golf social media to include all swaths of society. It was no longer just 45-year-old white dads who were opining on golf on the internet. It was, in fact, every cross-section of society had something to say about Scottie Scheffler. And so you got really funny memes. You got commentary that the typical golf audience, the people that they're advertising to during the commercials, when every commercial is like T-Mobile for Business or Comcast Business or Rolex, that's not really a great memeing crowd, but you get young people involved. You get not an exclusively white audience involved. It was an improvement for the way the sport was talked about for one day. There's no question about it.
Alex, is there, because I know there was a point at which some of the players were talking about not playing the second round. And because, a lot of people were also just shaken up. Somebody got killed, outside of the club there. From the way that was handled, rushing them out to the way, things happened with Scottie. It's are people taking shots at Louisville today? Like, hey man, maybe Louisville's just not, let's not pretend that Augusta is Athens or anything, right? But that maybe Louisville, maybe that they're just not quite ready for prime time, so to speak.
That was being discussed a lot on Friday morning while this was happening. It's a complete disaster of event management to have one of your vendor employees killed right outside your venue in a way that certainly could have been contributed to by the point that there is just one way in and out of this golf course where they're hosting tens of thousands of people every day, and that there wasn't a better communications mechanism in place or a better standard, a better system in place to prevent literally anything other than what happened from happening. And it is still possible, as we record this, that we will turn out that Scottie Scheffler attempted to assault and drag this police officer along the unforgiving concrete of Louisville, Kentucky. But I don't know that most people are thinking that's what happened or expecting that that's even going to be the opinion of the Louisville police or the prosecutor as we stand here now. So what we can definitely convict is the PGA of America and the Louisville police for not very good event management, if nothing else.
Alex, the golfer who finished second in this major was Bryson DeChambeau, who is on the LIV tour. And the overhang on the golf is the continued rift and maybe détente between these golf organizations. Where does that stand? And did this tournament have any likely effect on the resolution of this dispute between these organizations?
Where it stands is total shambles, and no, this tournament did not affect that at all, in my opinion. The PGA Tour and the Public Investment Fund of Saudi Arabia, very nice people, very well run, kind folks, have never been party to anything bad. They announced like a year ago now an agreement to, in theory, merge these golf tours or bring some sort of alliance between these golf tours that would reunite professional golf and put the live golf players and the PGA Tour players back together at more events than just the four majors. But that was a framework agreement subject to a lot of crossed T's and dotted I's. And not only have those T's not been T'd and the I's not been I'd, but some of the members of the PGA Tour's governing board, who are, number one, professional businessmen and investors, and number two, seen as being more sympathetic towards that deal, have resigned over the past week. And so if you are looking at the way that things have gone and putting two and two together, it looks pretty bleak right now for the prospect of there being an agreement between the two parties. And that's bad if you want to watch more competitive, fun golf more often. It's good if you would prefer that the guy who chopped up the dissident not have a direct hand in the management of the PGA Tour.
Alex Kirshner writes about golf and other things for Slate. He also is one of the hosts of the college football podcast Split Zone Duo. And in our bonus episode coming up shortly, he is going to distribute billions of dollars. So look forward to that. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Up next, analyzing Harrison Butker's commencement speech.
At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. We believe that every sport should be epic. Every home run, every hit, every inning, every play. From the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. Whether it's a walk-off grand slam or a base hit to center field. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only. Must be physically located in Virginia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
In a commencement speech at a Catholic college in Kansas last week, Kansas City Chiefs kicker Harrison Butker shared some thoughts. LGBTQ Pride Month, he said, celebrates deadly sins. Women have been told diabolical lies about having careers. Joe Biden is delusional and has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies. Butker also railed against the tyranny of diversity, equity, and inclusion, and a growing support for the degenerate cultural values. His retrograde comments got so much blowback, I think, because while they were pretty standard for far-right modern American conservatism, they were articulated by an NFL player. They also reflected a brand of hardcore religiosity that Butker has been pushing in public for a while. Here he is talking at the same school, Benedictine College, in 2022.
I really firmly believe that I can practice as hard as I want. If I go out there, that 49-yarder against the Bills, and God doesn't want that ball to go through the uprights, it's not going to happen. Now, I have to train and practice to make it go through the uprights. It might be his will for me to make that kick, but if I don't put in the work, it's not happening. But I believe no matter how much work I can put in, if he doesn't want me to make that kick and I'm praying for his will to be done in my life, he's not going to allow it.
Joel, right-wing Bible-thumping guys like Butker aren't unusual in pro sports locker rooms. If he had only said that God decides whether his field goals go through the uprights or not, no one would have paid any attention. But this felt like a calculated play, like Harrison Butker is warming up to run for Congress as a Republican when he's done kicking.
That's probably right. And the question that I've had from the very beginning of this whole thing is, who's pitching Harrison Butker as a commencement speaker and why? Like, who is this guy? Like, why? You know what I mean? Like, this is not an NFL celebrity. Like, very few people had heard of him until this weekend. So this isn't happening by accident or at random or because, the college had a last minute cancellation. They're welcoming this dude, having some idea what he's going to talk about. And so, I mean, I have to believe that, like, there's been some sort of deal worked out. And in a lot of ways, like you said, Stefan, I mean, the speech is sort of perfectly calibrated to elevate his profile. Like, if he has real ambition of becoming, and it's like, you don't even have to become a politician. You can just become a far-right influencer and make a lot of money doing that, right? Like, you don't have to really put yourself out there and offer yourself as if you want to pretend to do public service. You can just run a TikTok account and raise money for people and give speeches and make a lot of money in that way. And to do it on, like, one of America's most contested battlegrounds right now, the college campus, like, if you were trying to elevate your profile in this particular way, then this is how you would do it. But I mean, to me, Josh, I mean, the sad thing is, for everything he said about women and, the evils, the diabolical lies of, what society tells women that don't want to work inside the home, they want to work outside of the home, is that, like, it would have been so much better if they had asked his mother to talk. I mean, she's the physicist, right? Like, she's worked in Emory University's Department of Radiation Oncology for, like, almost 30 years. Like, that's the person that if you want to talk to college students and inspire them about what's possible, right? Like, that's the person I want to hear from, not the fucking kicker of the Kansas City Chiefs.
Wow. Kickers.
Seriously, a lot of strays to kickers this week.
Well,
I disagree with half of the premise of your intro, Stefan, which is I don't think that he's trying to run for Congress. I don't think that this is in many ways a standard athlete, conservative, religious message. I think what I felt reading the transcript and listening to, the audio of the speech is that I felt like I had wandered in to a, like, particularly Catholic conversation that was happening. This is a guy who is a traditional Catholic in a very, like, specific meaning of that term. Like, a thing that he talked about in that speech and that he has talked about consistently over years is the Latin Mass. And the Latin Mass is a thing in Catholicism that certain adherents, more conservative, more traditional adherents, believe is extremely important, that it's closer to the, original intent of the religion, gets you closer to God and all of this stuff. And that current contemporary Catholicism, led by Pope Benedict, has basically banned the Latin Mass, said that it's not important, that it's not in keeping with the religion currently. And he has talked about feeling persecuted because of that. And so this is a very kind of intra-Catholic dispute where it sounded to me like a lot of what he said is encouraging these people who go to a Catholic school to be more Catholic or to be the kind of Catholic that Harrison Butker thinks he could think. That's the thing he was talking about with Joe Biden. It's that he is a phony Catholic, a bad Catholic, an evil Catholic. He talked a lot about how they're Catholics in name only. Kinos, I don't know if that's a thing. But Stefan, it was really interesting to me that, yes, he did speak out against LGBTQ people, but he said it, the quote is, not the deadly sin sort of pride that has an entire month dedicated to it, but the true God-centered pride. He did it in a kind of like pun sort of way where you had to he didn't say, I hate gay people or I hate trans people. He talked about gender ideology. Like that's some of the more conservative sort of barely coded rhetoric. But when he was talking about the Latin Mass, he was very specific, you didn't have to read between the lines. He was very clear on what he believed and what he wanted these other people to believe.
And it's apparently and I'm certainly no Catholicism expert, but I did read a couple of pieces online, one in the National Catholic Reporter by a writer named Madison Chastain. There was another Twitter thread, Josh, that you found by a historian named Paul Putz, who talked about how even by the standards of sort of traditional Catholicism, this was pretty extreme stuff. And I'm going to point out that it wasn't only, he hasn't been just intra-Catholic. He actually spoke at, and I'm going to answer your original question, Joel, about why there and why him, but he also spoke at his alma mater, Georgia Tech, last year at commencement, and he delivered some pretty standard right-wing shit about identity politics. Identity politics have caused us to look at one another through a prism of hate and lack of respect for the human person. And again, reiterating his support for people getting married and starting a family. So there's a combination of things going on here. Yeah, on the one hand, he is a really hardcore Catholic. In the clip that I played was actually from a conversation he had at this school with its president, in which Butker talked about how he says the rosary when the Chiefs' defense is on the field. And then when the offense is on the field, he goes and starts warming up for potential field goal or extra point. The why, Joel, is that this college, Benedictine, he has had a close relationship with its president, Stephen Minnis. This guy is on the board of Butker's holding company, which owns a bunch of clothing and food brands, small clothing and food brands. And that Butker started this with a far-right former political aide who goes by Austin Wright or Austin Quick. The board of this company and executives of this company were listed on the website, but were taken down recently. And I looked it up on the Internet Wayback Machine. And it's a bunch of sort of standard Heritage Foundation graduate, former employee types. So there's a absolute right-wing tilt to Harrison Butker's not only religious life and ethical life, but also his political and business life.
No, that's true. And I mean, I believe him to be a true believer. I believe that he believes the things that he says, but I also believe that this is perfectly calibrated to elevate him into some sort of figure.
He talks about how he's a big Josh Hawley fan and a friend of Josh Hawley's.
Right. And I mean, you've already seen that the jersey, I think right now it has one of the most popular jerseys in the NFL, if not the most popular. And, there's this concern. I mean, anybody can sort of put not anything on change.org in terms of petitions, but it doesn't take a lot to get a petition there. And so, of course, the thing that happened is that some people have said, maybe the Chiefs should cut Harrison Butker. Well, I mean, we know the Chiefs are not going to do that. He's actually a good kicker. But it's the sort of thing that's just enough friction, just enough pushback so that people can pretend as if, oh, he's so dangerous. The things that he's saying are so important that the NFL and all these other people want to silence him. And so, they're using that change.org petition as an example of look at that. Right-wing values are being silenced. Being a real Christian is being silenced and everything else. And was he there because he really wanted to inspire a football field full of young, impressionable minds and send them out into the world with a positive and inspiring sense of purpose? No, I don't think so. I think it was a lot more self-aggrandizing than that he was there to elevate himself. And I mean, again, if you say, well, like my wife, who, the purpose in her life really started when she met me. I mean, wow. The dude clearly thinks a lot of himself and he's figured out a good lane. And I mean, the thing is, one good way to get paid, man, is to be this sort of right-wing grifter. I think about it all the time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I could do that and probably make a lot of money at it, man. Like, it's pretty cool. Like, if you really want to do it, you could do it. Which doesn't say, again, Josh, that he doesn't believe this stuff.
He's not a grifter. He believes everything that he's saying, and he's totally...
Well, you can still be a grifter and believe things.
I guess,
you know what I mean?
But he's totally transparent about... He says, I'm using my platform because people care about me, because I won a Super Bowl, to express what I believe. And I think he's clearly aiming to get a bigger platform and might be aiming for notoriety. I think the pushback could be helpful to him for exactly the reason that you said, Joel. But he is not, I think he's being pretty canny in not being as clearly and vocally anti-gay as, for instance, Reggie White or Tony Dungy.
I mean, is there a parallel to be made at all here, Joel, with what happened to Colin Kaepernick for speaking out about the police and justice and racism? Butker's comments can be viewed as kind of hateful. The NFL took a very cautious approach in its response to it. They had their senior vice president and chief diversity and inclusion officer, Jonathan Bean, said that Butker was speaking in his personal capacity. His views are not those of the NFL as an organization. The NFL is steadfast in our commitment to inclusion, which only makes our league stronger. Well, you know who else was steadfast in his commitment to inclusion? Was Colin Kaepernick, and he was out of a job. And Harrison Butker is advocating for the opposite.
Well, I mean, the real difference here is, Harrison Butker's owners have gone out and publicly defended him, right? The Hunt family, the matriarch and the daughters have spoken up on his behalf and defended him and, penned a public statement to that effect. So that right there is the sort of ally that Colin Kaepernick just did not have. If you want to say that, yes, I'll be generous and say that Harrison Butker is speaking up for what he believes in and is trying to leave what he believes to be a righteous fight, is putting himself at risk. But the thing is that, man, you don't put yourself at risk when you say the things that Harrison Butker says. Like that, it's actually very politically mainstream. There are plenty of people in public office and in media that are willing to defend him, even in sports media. I've read some columns over the weekend from people that sort of glinting approval. Like, I'm not going to say that they totally supported him, but I was kind of surprised that there wasn't more of a pushback. So he actually has articulated what I consider to be some of the more safer activist sort of things to say in public. And so, he really risked nothing by saying any of that stuff. Now, if he had been a little bit more hard-edged and said more explicitly homophobic things, then maybe he ventured it. But I mean,
this is the NFL. It's not the WNBA. I mean, it's also context is key. But I think when you say he risked nothing, I think it's actually even extends beyond your meaning to say that if he had gotten cut, which wasn't going to happen, but if he did, that would have been good for him too.
There's a whole ecosystem ready to support him if that happens. Like, he would become even more of a martyr were that to happen.
But I think there is a distinction to be made between disagreeing vehemently with what he said and believing that he should be cut for it. I think Colin Kaepernick should be in the league or should have been in the league. And I don't think this guy necessarily needs to lose his job. I think Stefan, idiot kicker. Mike Vanderjagt was the original idiot kicker, and he had the highest field goal percentage in history. He was called that because he blamed Peyton Manning for a playoff loss or something. He ended up getting cut and being out of a job when he missed a kick in the playoffs a few years later. So this guy's if he had a Super Bowl record 57-yard field goal. So kicker's job is always safe until he misses a kick. And
I will point out before we finish that Patrick Mahomes, the New York Post, dug up some comments he made to Pat McAfee after the Super Bowl in February, where he said, "I don't talk to Harrison Butker all year. I just let him do his thing. We sit right beside each other in team meetings, and I don't say one word to him, only before the season and after the season. That's the only time I talk to him."
Seemed like he may have been joking, but okay.
Maybe. Or maybe he just hates him.
Now it is time for Afterball, sponsored by Bennett's Prune Juice, endorsed by Kenny Sailors, who says it was okay. It's part of my one-man mission to mention just one person who played for the Indiana Pacers. I want to give some respect to Derek McKee of Meridian, Mississippi. Played at the University of Alabama, played for the late, great Seattle Supersonics, and then played on those great Indiana Pacers teams. He was traded there in 93, 94, was part of the team that made the finals in 2000. And he always pops into my head because I wrote this piece a bajillion years ago in 2005 for Slate, back when Adam Morrison was a thing, about white basketball players always getting compared to Larry Bird, no matter how ridiculous the comparisons were. And I had a paragraph in that piece that goes as follows. A 1997 Sports Illustrated piece argued that the lack of white stars in the NBA has caused a white inferiority complex. As a consequence, half-decent players become whites in shining armor. That was my phrase. In that SI piece, Keith Van Horn complains that ever since he was in high school, he felt the burden of being compared to Larry Bird. Who did he liken himself to? African-American swingman, Derek McKee. So let us give Keith Van Horn the honor of comparing him to the great Derek McKee. Stefan, what is your Derek McKee?
On the last day of my trip to Greece, I visited one of Athens' off-the-beaten-path tourist attractions, the basketball court where Giannis Antetokounmpo played as a kid. It's in the working-class neighborhood of Sepolia, 2 courts actually, enclosed by a chain-link fence and surrounded by the city's ubiquitous 5- and 6-story white apartment buildings. One court features a baseline-to-baseline Giannis in his Milwaukee Bucks uniform, painted in 2017 by a Greek graffiti artist and sponsored by Nike. I talked to a couple of young guys who were playing pickup. Dimitri wore a white Antetokounmpo's jersey with Giannis's 34 on the front and older brother Thanasis' 43 on the back. Mario had on a Nike Just Do It tee. They told me they had played there years ago with the 2 younger brothers, Kostas and Alex. Giannis signed a couple of jerseys for Dimitri during a promotional visit to a mall. Everyone is proud of him. People are happy. He's accomplished a lot, Dimitri said. Across the street, under a shade tree and a tan awning, Cafe Kivotos is a shrine to Greek basketball, with dozens of photos, jerseys, and pennants decorating the walls. The silver-haired owner, Yannis Tsikas, proudly showed me a photo of him in the crowd when Greece beat Coach K, LeBron, Carmelo, and D. Wade in the semifinals of the World Championships in Japan in 2006. He walked me through framed jerseys signed by Greek players from tournaments in Madrid, Poland, Lithuania, Slovenia, Croatia, Italy, all of which he drove to in the vintage red and black Citroën 2CV parked in back. But Giannis is the star of Tsikas' show. There they are at his first game for the Greek national team in 2012 when Giannis was 17. There's the jersey he first wore for Greece. You know, Tsikas said he started out wearing number 13, not 34. That's the jersey from the 2018 NBA All-Star game that Giannis gave him. Tsikas described at length the surprise visit he and his wife made to Milwaukee during the 2022 playoffs. For Tsikas, Giannis's rise to greatness is a personal story. Around 2008 or 2010, he said, Giannis and his brothers started coming into his cafe to ask for water. Tsikas said they were polite and clearly in need. So we gathered them up in here, ta pitsirikaikia, the little kids, he said. In time, they'd stop by before school. They didn't have anything to eat, he told me. I gave them some fruit, a sandwich. Go with God. You would have done the same thing. What Tsikas was doing was actually risky. The violent, neo-fascist, anti-immigrant Golden Dawn group had risen to prominence after Greece's financial crisis. In a couple of national elections, it won more than a quarter of the vote in Sepolia. Zikas said he was routinely asked why he was helping the little black kids, and that the people asking used a Greek word that can double as a slur. Miran Fader's 2021 biography, Giannis, The Improbable Rise of an NBA MVP, details some of what Giannis and his brothers experienced. Opposing fans making monkey noises and calling them apes. A shop owner shooing them out with a broom saying, "We don't want you here," meaning in Greece, when the boys were singing Christmas carols for donations. After Giannis was drafted by the Bucks in 2013, the leader of Golden Dawn said on national TV, "If you give a chimpanzee in the zoo a banana and a flag, is he Greek?" The Giannis court painting was defaced with Golden Dawn symbols. A conservative government minister deliberately mispronounced his last name and sarcastically said, "Doesn't he play as a Greek? The guy was born somewhere in Africa." Giannis's parents, Veronica and Charles, emigrated illegally from Nigeria. But he and his brothers were born in Greece, grew up in Greece, and were educated in Greece, and their parents gave them all Greek first names. None was granted Greek citizenship, though, until it was clear that Giannis was heading to the NBA and might choose to play internationally for Nigeria. I asked Zikas if he thought Giannis had helped make Greece a more accepting and less racist country. "If you cut off a pig's snout, he'll still find a way to root around," he said. But he also asked rhetorically, "There isn't racism in America?" Giannis has never fully detailed what he endured growing up. Even his most benign observations about Greece and racism have provoked vile backlash from conservative politicians and commentators, and not just fascists. Giannis has brushed it off. He once told Sports Illustrated, "I can't click a button so they change their opinion." Mostly, I guess, he hasn't wanted to relive the pain or to let racism frame the story of the hard work it took for him and his family to rise above their circumstances, or to occlude the genuine sense of national pride he feels for Greece and the gratitude he feels for the Greek coaches, teammates, teachers, landlords, lawyers, and random citizens like Zikas who looked out for him. As the cafe owner put it to me, Giannis doesn't say that he had a bad time out of respect for his country. Giannis did open up a bit more in Kristen Lappis's documentary, Giannis, The Marvelous Journey, which was released this year on Amazon Prime. In one scene, he talks about how he would make a game of running home in the dark, asking his little brothers, "Do you think we can get home in 2 minutes?" When the actual reason was he wanted to avoid Golden Dawn thugs. "In me, I was scared as fuck," Giannis says. He breaks down in tears, remembering how he tried to protect Kostas and Alex. As an NBA champ and two-time MVP, Giannis has become a Greek hero, but he's also a rebuke to Greece, a giant middle finger. He'd never put it that way, because by all evidence, he remains as sweet and caring as the skinny kid with unformed skills who was drafted absurdly straight from Greece's second division. By choice or personality, Giannis has separated the bad people from the good place, the hatred of some from the generosity of others. Let's listen to a clip from Lappis's documentary. The first speaker is a Greek journalist named Haris Stavru. The second is Giannis's wife, Mariah, and the third is Giannis.
Giannis, Thanasis, Alex, and Kostas, they really love Greece. That's a place they grew up. But we don't deserve Giannis. That's my point of view.
When we go back to Greece, I was like, why do you like being here if there's so many people who don't think you belong here?
You don't see a lot of immigrants thriving in Greece. I feel like if me or my brothers don't do it now, who's gonna do it?
Giannis is referring there to his family foundation to help immigrants and others in need in Greece, Nigeria, and Milwaukee. And the background scene is Giannis and his mom and brothers posing with the Larry O'Brien Trophy and the Finals MVP trophy on the Acropolis. The metaphor is pretty obvious. They had reached the literal mountaintop, and there's nothing Greece's racists can do about it.
That was great, Stefan. Did you make a trip there specifically to the court and to meet Zikas?
Yeah, I did. I knew about the court. I had read about the court before, and I wanted to see it. So on our last morning in Athens, my wife and I, Melissa and I, went to the court, and I had read a couple of stories in advance, so I knew that there was this cafe across the street. And I walked in and just said, "Hi, are you Giannis Antetokounmpo?" And he said, "Yeah, I am today." And I wasn't sure if he was joking or not, but then he literally...
Did you buy anything?
Didn't have to, because he immediately offered us drinks and had us sit down and had us in there for like 45 minutes and said, "If you really want me to tell you the story of Giannis, you need to come back and spend a week."
Oh, that's great, man. That's great. And yeah, man, I loved hearing that story. And, actually, it was a few years ago. You know that Giannis is like really sensitive about this, because there was a story that ran about him on, there's a Bleacher Report. No, it was TNT. They did like a sort of a long, feature on him. And apparently he brought up some of the racism he faced in Greece, and there was a big deal. So they ended up having to pull that segment off air because of the fears around it. So I know that like that's something that he really does not want to talk about. But yeah, man, getting that guy to talk about it, and at least somebody can keep it real, about what he faced and how everybody treated him. Because I feel like he was spooked out of ever wanting to talk about that again, which totally understandable, right?
Totally understandable. I mean, it's a remarkable story, especially when you know the country and you understand what immigrants go through there and the way they've been treated historically. For him and his family to have survived as long as they did, selling stuff on the beach, taking odd jobs, shuttling from apartment to apartment. It is an incredible story. And the fact that there were people that encouraged them to play, got them to play, supported them, and treated them like Greeks, like teammates, like native people, is a testament to the good people there. And I think Giannis never wants to lose sight of that.
That is all for this episode. We've also got a bonus episode that's live right now on the upcoming reported multi-billion-dollar NCAA settlement. To hear our thoughts on that, subscribe to Slate Plus on Apple Podcasts by clicking try free at the top of our show page, or visit slate.com/hangout plus to get access wherever you listen. Again, the episode is available right now, and we'll see you over there. Our show notes are at slate.com/hangup. You can email us at hangup@slate.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the show and rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Our producer is Kevin Bendis. For Joel Anderson and Stefan Fatsis, I'm Josh Levin. Remember Zelmo Beatty, and thanks for listening.
At Bet365, we don't do ordinary. We believe that every sport should be epic. Every home run, every hit, every inning, every play. From the moments that are legendary to the ones that fly under the radar. See for yourself when you sign up today and get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. 21 plus only. Must be physically located in Virginia. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Terms and conditions apply.